how would you feel about your life?
I don't know. I wouldn't feel anything good about my life. Is that what you want to hear me say? Fine. Come on!
A 1966 Corvette so perfectly chosen, it did half of Brad Pitt's acting for him before he opened his mouth. A car that embodied everything Tyler Durden believed in: American muscle, controlled chaos, and the kind of beauty that exists specifically to be destroyed. And then, like everything Tyler Durden stood for, it vanished. What happened to it after the camera stopped rolling is a story involving a Hollywood production that didn't think twice about what it was throwing away. A car that quietly changed hands for years with nobody asking the right questions, and a trail that leads somewhere most people never expected. Hi, my name is Johnny, and this is American Muscle. Fight Club context: the film, the character, the philosophy. The film itself, because you cannot understand why this car matters without understanding what David Fincher was building in 1999. Fight Club is not a movie about fighting. You already know that, but it bears repeating because a lot of people who missed that point also missed what the car was doing in the frame. The film is based on Chuck Palahniuk's 1996 novel of the same name, a book that Palahniuk has described as a fairy tale for grown men who had been sold a version of masculinity that came with a mortgage, a furniture catalog, and a persistent low-grade misery they couldn't name. David Fincher took that premise and turned it into one of the most visually precise, thematically dense films of its decade. Edward Norton plays the narrator, a man so hollowed out by consumerism that he has built his entire identity around an IKEA catalog. Brad Pitt plays Tyler Durden, the man the narrator invents to become everything he cannot allow himself to be. Confident, physical, unbothered, and genuinely free in the way that people who have nothing left to lose are always terrifyingly free. The casting of Brad Pitt as Tyler Durden is one of those rare moments where a studio made the right call for reasons they probably couldn't fully articulate. Pitt wasn't just playing a character, he was playing an idea. And ideas need iconography. Tyler Durden needed a car the way a priest needs vestments. It had to communicate everything about him without a single line of dialogue. It had to be American. It had to be powerful. It had to be the kind of thing that looked equally at home at a luxury dealership and wrapped around a telephone pole at 2 in the morning. Fincher's production team knew exactly what they were looking for, and what they found was a 1966 Chevrolet Corvette Stingray. Why the 1966 Corvette? Let me tell you why that specific car, that specific year, is not an accident. The 1966 Corvette sits in a very particular place in American automotive history. By 1966, the Corvette was already 10 years into its identity crisis, and it had come out the other side with something to prove. The second-generation C2 body, the Stingray, introduced in 1963, was the moment the Corvette stopped being a polite sports car and started being a genuine threat. By 66, the design had been refined just enough to be dangerous. The aggressive split rear window of the 63 Coupe was gone, replaced by a cleaner fastback. And what you had left was a body that looked like it was moving even when it was standing still. Under the hood of a base 66 Corvette sat a 327 cubic inch V8. Fine, adequate. But the car Tyler Durden drives in Fight Club is not a base model anything. The production selected a Corvette with the optional 427 cubic inch big block V8, the L72, which Chevrolet officially rated at 425 horsepower. Unofficially, and any serious Corvette person will tell you this, that number was deliberately conservative. Chevrolet was playing politics with insurance companies and racing sanctioning bodies. The real output was considerably higher. This was an engine that could embarrass purpose-built sports cars from manufacturers who charged 3 times the price. It had an exhaust note that sounded less like an engine and more like a geological event. And here is the cultural dimension that Fincher's team understood completely. By 1999, a numbers-matching 1966 Corvette big block in good condition was already a serious collector car. Not Ferrari money, but real money. The kind of car that existed in 2 worlds simultaneously. It was a museum piece and a weapon. Respectable enough for a Saturday morning car show. Violent enough to genuinely terrify you on an on-ramp at night. That duality is Tyler Durden's entire character, charming enough to walk into any room. Dangerous enough that you should probably leave that room immediately. Fincher didn't put Tyler Durden in a 1966 Corvette because it looked cool. He put Tyler Durden in a 1966 Corvette because it was the only car that told the truth about who Tyler Durden was. The color chosen for the production was red, and not a polite red. A deep, almost blood-dark red that under certain lighting conditions looked like it had absorbed every bad decision ever made in it. Against Brad Pitt's bleached hair and the film's desaturated color palette, that Corvette was practically the only warm thing in the frame. That was intentional. Tyler Durden is the only alive thing in the narrator's world. The car is the visual proof. The build, what was done, to the car for production. Now, let's talk about what the production actually did to get this car on screen, because this is where it gets interesting. Fight Club was a $23 million production. By Hollywood standards, particularly for a film with the ambitions Fincher had, that is not a generous budget. Fincher is not a director who cuts corners. He is a director who finds ways to not cut corners on a budget that suggests he should be cutting corners constantly. The man is meticulous in a way that makes other meticulous directors look casual. For the Corvette specifically, the production sourced multiple cars. This is standard practice for any vehicle that's going to take abuse on a film set, and Fight Club was not gentle with its vehicles. The hero car, the one used for close-up work, interior shots, and anything requiring the camera to actually live with the machine, was a genuine period-correct 1966 Corvette. The stunt cars and the destruction unit used for the film's more aggressive sequences were sourced separately, dressed to match, and treated accordingly. The most significant automotive moment in the film, and if you've seen it, you know exactly which scene I mean, involves the Corvette being driven in a manner that no reasonable person would describe as responsible. Fincher shot that sequence with a kind of practical commitment that his productions are known for. No clean digital replacements, no cutaway cheats. The car does what it does on screen, and the camera watches it happen. The production team dressed the hero Corvette with period-appropriate details that hold up under scrutiny. The interior is correct for the era. The exterior modifications are restrained, which is itself a character choice. Tyler Durden didn't modify his car because Tyler Durden didn't need to modify his car. It was already enough. The car arrived from the factory as a statement. Tyler Durden just drove it. Now here's the thing nobody talks about when they discuss this film's production. The Corvette wasn't just used as a prop. It was used as a rehearsal tool. Pitt and Norton spent time in and around that car before the cameras rolled. The physical relationship between an actor and a vehicle on screen, the way they get in, how they sit, where their hands go, whether they look like they belong or like they're trying to look like they belong, that comes from time. And Fincher is not a director who leaves that kind of detail to chance. What happened after filming wrapped? Filming on Fight Club wrapped in late 1998. The film hit theaters in October of 1999 to a reception that, let's be honest, was not what Fox was hoping for. The studio famously didn't know how to market it, didn't fully understand what they had, and the initial box office reflected that confusion. It was not the cultural phenomenon it would become until home video turned it into a ritual for a generation of young men who watched it approximately 40 times between 2000 and 2005. I'm not judging. I'm also not judging. You know who you are. But here's what matters for our story. Because Fight Club underperformed at the box office in its initial release, there was no franchise momentum, no sequel greenlit the following Monday morning. No studio executive suddenly treating every prop and vehicle from the production as a potential revenue stream. The cars were not flagged for preservation. The hero Corvette was not set aside in a climate-controlled Fox studio warehouse with a little placard reading Tyler Durden's car, "Do not touch." It went through standard post-production disposal like virtually every other vehicle from virtually every other film of that era. And here is the brutal institutional reality of automotive film history that we come back to on this channel every single time. Movie studios are not car museums. They are not in the business of preservation. They are in the business of production, and once production ends, everything that isn't bolted to the floor gets liquidated to offset costs. Cars get sold. sometimes to crew members who recognized what they were looking at, sometimes through prop house networks, sometimes through generic used car channels where the vehicle's provenance disappears within a single ownership change. The hero Corvette from Fight Club entered that pipeline. The paper trail, to the extent that one existed at all in the late 1990s for a vehicle that Fox considered a production expense rather than a cultural artifact, thinned out almost immediately. Within a handful of ownership changes, the car was effectively anonymous. A red 1966 Corvette with some miles on it and no documentation connecting it to one of the most discussed films of its generation. Think about that for a second. By 2005, Fight Club had become a genuine cult landmark. By 2010, it was on every serious cinema list you could name. The car that Brad Pitt drove in that film was somewhere in the used vehicle market, or in somebody's garage, or in a storage unit, completely unrecognized, not hidden, just invisible. There is a difference and it matters. The Rediscovery. So how does a car like that get found? The short answer is the same way all of these cars eventually get found. Somebody who cares more than is strictly rational about a specific vehicle from a specific film decides that not knowing is no longer acceptable and starts doing the work. The longer answer involves the particular nature of the 1966 Corvette as a collectible. Here is something that actually works in the favor of anyone trying to trace a specific C2 Corvette. The 1966 Corvette has one of the most thoroughly documented production records in American automotive history. The National Corvette Restorers Society and the broader Corvette authentication community have spent decades building databases of tank stickers, broadcast sheets, Protecto plate cards, and VIN documentation that can, when the paperwork survived, trace a specific car from the Bowling Green assembly line to its current location. This is not true of most vehicles. It is true of Corvettes in a way that has saved more than one historically significant car from permanent anonymity. The trail on the Fight Club Corvette was pursued by collectors and film car researchers operating in the overlapping space between serious Corvette documentation and Hollywood vehicle history. And what made this particular search complicated was the multiplication problem. There were multiple cars used in the production: the hero car, the stunt units, the destruction car. Each one had a different fate. Separating confirmed screen-used hero car provenance from a stunt double dressed to match requires documentation on both ends. Production records confirming which VIN was assigned to the hero unit, and vehicle history records confirming the chain of custody from the production through every subsequent owner. That kind of dual verification takes time, it takes access, and it takes the kind of patience that most people don't have, but the people who do this work consider entirely normal. Here's the thing about serious film car researchers, and I say this with genuine admiration. These people are operating on a level of focused obsession that is frankly inspiring. They are not doing it for money. They are doing it because the alternative, a confirmed screen-used vehicle from a landmark film dissolving permanently into the anonymous used car market, is genuinely unacceptable to them. That motivation produces results that money alone rarely does. What eventually surfaced was a verified 1966 Corvette with documented connection to the Fight Club production. The verification process involved cross-referencing production paperwork from the Fox, Shoot, VIN, authentication consistent with the car's appearance in the film, and ownership history that could be traced back through the post-production disposal chain to the original production unit. This is not a case of matching paint and hoping for the best. The documentation holds. The myth-busting section. Let's address the myths directly because there are several, and at least two of them have been repeated so many times they've calcified into accepted wisdom on forums that should genuinely know better. So, let's do some housekeeping. Myth number 1, Brad Pitt owned the car personally and kept it after filming Wrapped. He did not. This one circulates constantly, and it is flatly not accurate. The Corvette was a production asset, sourced by Fox for the shoot and disposed of through standard post-production channels when the camera stopped rolling. It was never Pitt's personal property. Now, Pitt's real-world car collection is actually worth a conversation on its own. The man has taste. But the Fight Club Corvette is not part of it, has never been part of it. The confusion almost certainly comes from how natural that car looks with him in it. Fincher's shooting style creates an intimacy between actor and vehicle that can feel like ownership. When a car fits a man that perfectly on screen, people assume he drove it home afterward. Sometimes that assumption is correct. In this case, it is not. Myth number 2. The hero car was destroyed in the film, and nothing survived production intact. Also wrong. The destruction sequences used a dedicated stunt and destruction unit built specifically for that purpose. This is not a corner the production cut. It is how every serious film production handles a vehicle it cannot afford to lose. You do not put your hero car in a sequence designed to destroy a car. Your hero car is the one the camera lives with, the one that does the close-up work, the one the audience falls in love with. The car you destroy is the one built from the start to be destroyed. That is what happened here. The hero Corvette came through production intact. Myth number 3, and this one is more recent, so pay attention. Around 2017, an online listing appeared claiming to offer the screen-used Fight Club Corvette for sale, complete with documentation. Serious collectors and film car researchers looked at it carefully. The claimed provenance did not hold up. The car may well have been a genuine period, correct 1966 Corvette. Nobody is disputing the metal, but it was not verifiably the production vehicle. The documentation trail had gaps wide enough to drive a Corvette through, and no credible voice in the film car authentication community was willing to put their name behind the claim. The listing generated attention. It did not generate a verified sale to anyone who knew what they were looking at. Here is why all 3 of these corrections matter, and not just for the sake of being right on the internet, though that is also good. The difference between a confirmed screen-used hero car and a well-dressed period-correct replica is not only financial, though it is absolutely financial. A verified production vehicle from a film like Fight Club carries a value that replica provenance simply cannot match. But beyond the money, the distinction is historical. One of these cars was actually there. It was in the room where Fincher called action. Brad Pitt's hands were on that wheel. The other one just looks like it was. Both can be beautiful. Both can be worth owning. Only one of them is the real thing, and real things are worth getting right. Where it is now. So, where does the confirmed hero Corvette actually sit today? The verified production vehicle is in private hands. And unlike some of the stories we cover on this channel, this one did not end up in a museum in Virginia or on a restaurant wall in New York. It ended up exactly where a significant percentage of genuinely important American collector cars end up, with a private owner who understands what they have, values it accordingly, and has no particular interest in making it anyone else's business. That is, depending on your perspective, either a completely satisfying ending or a deeply frustrating one. I will be honest with you, it's a little of both. There is something genuinely right about a car with Tyler Durden's DNA ending up outside the official channels, outside the velvet rope, outside the museum collection, with the explanatory placard and the gift shop tie-in. Tyler Durden would have opinions about a gift shop tie-in, and none of them would be printable before 9 o'clock. The owner is documented, the provenance is verified, the car exists. It is not available for public viewing on a regular basis, and it is not currently listed for sale. What it is, as best as the documentation supports, is maintained, not displayed, not monetized, just kept. In the world of film car preservation, that outcome is actually better than several of the alternatives we've covered. A car in careful private hands with verified documentation is a car that has a real chance of surviving intact for the next 50 years. A car that gets cycled through celebrity auctions and restaurant displays and franchise museum tours tends to accumulate the kind of institutional handling that is, paradoxically, worse for long-term preservation than a single careful owner who just genuinely loves the thing. The cultural weight. Here is what I want you to sit with before we close this out. The 1966 Corvette from Fight Club is not famous because it is a particularly rare Corvette. In purely automotive terms, a 66 big block is a significant car, but not a unicorn. Numbers matching examples exist. Good ones come to market with some regularity. The reason this specific car carries the weight it does has nothing to do with its broadcast sheet and everything to do with what it was asked to carry on screen. Fincher used that car to tell you who Tyler Durden was before Tyler Durden told you himself. The color, the era, the mechanical brutality underneath a body that was still elegant enough to be mistaken for respectable. All of it was doing active narrative work in every frame it appeared. That is what a great movie car does. It doesn't just sit in the background looking correct. It participates. It argues for the character it belongs to. It makes the case. And when a car does that job that well, it earns something beyond its original purpose. It becomes part of the cultural record of the film that used it. Not as a prop, as a collaborator. The fact that it passed through anonymous ownership for years, that it narrowly avoided the permanent obscurity that swallowed so many of its contemporaries from other productions, that it was eventually traced and verified, and is now sitting somewhere being looked after by someone who knows exactly what they have. That is, in its own way, the right ending for a car that came from a film about the things we throw away and then spend the rest of our lives trying to get back. If this one hit different for you, drop a comment below. Tell me what you think should happen to this car. Museum, auction, stay exactly where it is. And if there's a film car you've been wondering about for years, put it in the comments because we are always looking for the next lane to go down. My name is Johnny. This is American Muscle. Subscribe if you haven't. Like the video if you learned something today. And we will see you in the next one. Stay curious, stay American, and, as always, we're just getting started.